Hey everyone, welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is episode 112. I am Jacob and I am here with Libby. Good evening, Libby.
Hey everyone.
So, I had a conversation with Mitch, a medical professional who found himself in the midst of the kava-kratom drink and got hooked on those. And he talks about how he broke free from those and then had a recent relapse and how he's getting back on track. He did talk a bit about some interesting topics based on his experience as a medical professional. For our intro today, we wanted to talk a little bit about taking your time and doing things, I would say, methodically in recovery. What kind of spurred this topic was we see a lot folks, and I've been guilty of this myself, that they decide they're going to get clean from kratom, and then at the same time they're going to quit drinking alcohol, and they're going to quit smoking, and they're going to go to the gym, and they're going to be a better parent to their kids, and they're going to go to therapy, and they're going to rekindle their relationship with their spouse. I just rattled off like 7 things. But all the time, people want to make big life changes, and that is inspiring, and we should all, I think, if you want to be inspiring or be moving towards goals in life. But I think it's challenging to try to do everything at once, particularly if you're dealing with an addiction. I remember the first AA meeting I think I went to, which happened to be court ordered, but that's a different story altogether. The one thing I took away from it was someone was saying, the only thing you really have to do if you're new to this is just worry about the drinking or the drugs, or in this case, the kratom. If that's your big problem, I would suggest starting there, getting where you want to be with that and getting off of it, getting stable, and then moving on to the next thing. If you're comfortable with 2 things or 3 things, maybe that's a good balance, but trying to conquer everything in your life can be challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I've never really been a big fan of New Year's resolutions for that reason, because I think that we all have really big, exciting goals. And especially when you're like quitting kratom and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to change my whole life and I'm going to be the healthiest version of myself. I'm going to work out every day. And like you stack all these expectations on yourself when like all you really need to focus on is creating a really solid foundation so that you can build upon that super slowly. And that's the most effective way to create new habits. For me, I knew that going into this quit, that like everything would fall in line as it was supposed to, but all I really needed to do was like put my 110% focus into quitting and staying sober. So I think that it can get really overwhelming when we are like setting our sights so big and wanting to do all the things, but really building habit.
Yeah. It could also like wreak havoc on your self-esteem when you should be actually building your self-esteem up because you've done so many good things that you've already changed, but you end up focusing on the 1 or 2 things that you didn't do or that you backslid into or whatever. I remember when I first quit kratom for good, for real, the last time, and how I found myself eating a lot of brownies and sweets again, which when I quit drinking it wasn't like a problem, but it was just like one of those things where I wanted to continue to eat healthy because that's something that I like to do. But I just said, whatever I do for this month, 2 months, 3 months, it's fine. Yeah. Maybe I'll gain a few pounds or whatever, but it was something I had to allow myself to do. And then a few months later, I got back to the eating habits I wanted to because I felt like I was in a good spot and really didn't affect me in any way, shape, or form in the long term.
I think that's such a big piece, is like that patience and compassion for yourself as you're making these changes in your life, and knowing that there's all this time to get where you want to go, and it all doesn't have to happen today or tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't remember who specifically on one of the recent interviews I had, but she had said something like she had resigned herself to the fact that like using kratom or was just going to be like her life. Like nothing would change. That would be how it is. I think sometimes that's the risk people run when they like do too many things and then they fail at the big one or the large one they really want to change in their life. And then they're like, I tried and that's it. You know, I'm not ever going to be able to do it. And I've been guilty of that kind of thinking myself, which doesn't really help because you can, sounds corny, but you can do most things, if particularly when it comes to recovery, if you want to, and if you really put the effort in, and that effort can look different for other people and there's obstacles, but nothing we're talking about when it comes to getting off of this stuff is
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of it as like, how can I best set future me up for success and not failure, and like being realistic about that.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I could probably go on and on about this topic, but I think I'm starting to repeat myself. So with that, maybe we'll get on to the interview with Mitch and keep it kratom free. Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is Jacob, and this evening I have the pleasure of speaking to Mitch. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well also. Can't really complain. Just doing my thing. Mitch, how would you like to introduce yourself to the audience? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I'm going to apologize in advance. I've got a cat here that's very needy, so he just started meowing as soon as we pressed record, but
All right.
just ignore that. But yeah, so I'm Mitch. I am a nurse. I live in Austin, Texas. And since I'm a nurse, I'm going to be a little bit vague about super specific details since I got a license. But at the end of the day, I'm not, I used to be in cardiac ICU was my specialty.
Okay.
But that was pre-kratom, thankfully.
Pre-kratom.
And I'm now in the med spa space, specifically handling medical weight loss with the world renowned Ozempic type GLP-1 medications, which actually I do want to touch on later. That does apply to this kratom thing. But yeah, so Austin, Texas, nurse. I'm 32 years old, and I fell victim to the feel-free bottles very quickly and very rapidly, even despite having all the warnings and education and all of that background.
Okay. I think a lot of us did, unfortunately. So
yeah,
don't feel too bad about it. It happens to the best of us. Why don't we talk a little bit about that then? So how did you first come to find kratom? Did you start with the kava-kratom drink? Did you start with powder? Did you first try it with friends? How'd that happen?
Yeah, actually, no. My first experience was not with the extracts. I can't remember. I had heard rumblings a little bit about kratom. I knew what it was on a surface level through people who had experience with it in the past, but nothing was ever a deep conversation as far as like withdrawals and the dangers of it. Just this touched on opioid-like quality of it. So I'm trying to remember. I had bought some capsules at one point.
Okay.
I had plans to go run some errands with a friend, and I wasn't really looking forward to it. And there was a smoke shop across the street from me, and I had wandered in there, and I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. So I bought a little bag of capsules, and I popped maybe 4 or 5 of them. And an hour later, my friend picks me up. We're running errands, and it was subtle. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was almost like, all right, I had my little cup of coffee and I wasn't dreading the day, but it was short-lived. I wasn't high. It was nothing. Couldn't even tell you what happened to the rest of that bag. It was nothing of note. Fast forward to this year, that had to have been like 2 years ago.
Okay, so 2 years ago. Just before you go further, do you have any experience with substance abuse or any history of that or anything in the past?
Substance abuse, I would have to say no. So
okay, good.
I went into this arrogantly, like my whole life, I'm sitting here saying I'm not an addictive personality.
Yeah.
I've had a healthy relationship with alcohol. In the medical world, one drink is technically it's a poison, but
Yeah, there's no more this BS about one drink is good for you.
Yeah.
Probably not going to do a lot of harm in the scheme of things, but it's still, there's no amount of alcohol is good.
Exactly. Like we're taught that if a patient comes in and you ask them how many drinks do they have in a week, you are supposed to double it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, my history with substances has been the classic recreational use. I dabbled with weed in as early as high school. Nothing to the point of physical dependence.
Okay.
I have a very personal experience with what that means now, and that kind of my kratom experience taught me that. But yeah, I've tried everything. Yeah, like.
So you're a curious person, recreational drug use, never had any issues with substance abuse or addiction. Okay.
Yeah, and it definitely burned me here, because when what you just said was like, I'm curious. Yeah, I'm been the type of person that's I'll try anything twice. I want to see. And if my first experience is bad, like when I first tried mushrooms, awful experience. Time I tried it, I had one of the best nights of my life. So
yeah,
I don't have a lot of fear when it comes to this type of stuff. And now I have a healthy fear of it, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to establish a kind of a baseline for the audience. All right.
Yeah,
so 2 years ago, you buy the capsules, you try them, finish the small bag or whatever. About a year goes by, nothing of consequence happens. And then you said that you wanted to start like a year from in the past. Okay.
Yeah, more recently. So this was actually this last spring of 2024.
Okay.
I came across the feel-free bottles, and I saw it on, I think it was a 7-Eleven, one of my little gas stations, one of the 3 of them down the road from me that sell all of them. So I go in and I pick up one of the little bottles and I get it because it says kratom on it. And I'm like, ooh, let me see what this is. And I turn it over. I bought it. I turn it over and I'm looking at the ingredients and it says kava-kratom, as we all know at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously I don't have one here. I think it had a percentage on the back for the kratom, and I'm pretty sure it said extract.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it. I want to say it was a super low number percentage, and I'm like, all right, whatever. That it's a low percent. I'm a nurse. I know what milligrams and all that equate to, but I did it, and I even read that it said the daily dose. I think it's no more than however many servings, 3 servings in a day. And I did that, and I had a great day. It kicked in very quickly, and it was much more potent than that last experience with the capsules.
Okay.
And so I really enjoyed it.
First time you tried that, you really liked it? All right.
Of course. So I had that honeymoon experience where it was great. Probably went 3 or 4 days without one. I went back, and I was like, I want to have another good day. Got another one. And classic story, it ramped up from there pretty shockingly and quickly, to a point where the attendant at that gas station's like, hey, if you buy a box of this, I'll count.
Yeah. How long do you think that took? Like a month, 2 months, 3 months?
I want to say I did that first one March or April, and by July I'm buying a box.
Okay, by July you're buying a box. And were you like immediately taking one every day, or were you taking like a couple every day and taking a couple days off? What was your usage like?
No, there was no day off. So
you were all in. Yeah.
Yeah. What happened was I was buying 1 a day, and then it went to 2 a day.
Okay.
And then, because I remember specifically the moment I hit 4 a day, one of my friends had a pool party, and I took 2 before the pool party. And then by the end of the day, I had taken the other 2. And this was like June.
Okay.
So then my tolerance was going up very quickly.
Yeah, it rises pretty fast with these.
Yeah. And I want to note also, I've been prescribed Adderall. I'm taking Adderall, which is affecting your dopamine. I've never abused it. And it's always been, I don't think I had ever taken more than 10 milligrams in a day. It's always been a very low dose. Comparative, there's people taking up to 30 or more milligrams of it. Never had an issue with that. My tolerance with that was never I bring it up because my tolerance with this went up so quickly compared to the things that I've taken in the past, where it's almost like I built a physical dependence on it before I even realized it.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
shocking.
All right. So that's like a 3-month period by the time you get to buying a case. And how fast were you going through that? Sounds like you were taking like 4 a day by June. Where did it go from there?
I'd finish a case. So I don't think I was ever taking more than 8 in a day. Obviously, I wasn't counting. But when I think back about it, it got to a point where I would go in the morning and get a case, but I would finish the case in enough time to where I was buying one every day.
All right.
So it was like I'd finish half of it. Yeah.
It's okay.
Finish the other half, and I would need another one the next afternoon. So I'm taking anywhere between 6 to 8 of these. And you've heard the story 1,000 times. I've read about it 1,000 times. I'm keeping a grocery bag in my car in case I throw up.
Okay.
And then I'm throwing up. I feel better. But
was that the main side effect you had, or did you have other side effects too?
Oh, I had the gambit.
Okay.
It was...
And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were saying something else too.
No, you're good. Yeah, so it would get to the point where I'm keeping a bag in case I throw up, and then I'm going, oh, there goes $10. I need to take another one. So you take the other one. And then,
so you were basically like, I lost my dose, so I'm going to take another one because I threw it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, full addict behavior. And I don't even realize that I'm high because it's such a subtle high. It's not, I'm going to work. I'm doing all of these things. And it's the classic, my day's great. I'm connecting with people that I wouldn't have reached out to before. Like me and my friends were chatting, and I'm just in a better mood. So you think you're good, but you're high. It's crazy.
Delusional.
Yeah.
With this stuff too, what I found was like like you said, it's a weird kind of high where it doesn't get you to the point where you're like impaired and doing stupid stuff. Like if you drink a bunch of alcohol, it doesn't not like classical traditional opiates where if you take a lot of them, you get to the point where you're like nodding out. That doesn't really, I don't know, maybe it could happen with some of the new really strong products, but it's not super common. Maybe like at night when you're tired, I noticed that. But it doesn't get you to the point where you're like really out of it high. Yeah, I could see how that's...
Yeah, I'm not like swerving on the road. It's a functional high. And that honestly to me was the pitfall, because I've definitely drank more in the past than I probably should be drinking. But everybody knows what's going to happen if you wake up in the morning and you start drinking vodka from the time you wake up and you start doing it every day.
Yes.
The danger of this is, I'm doing this in the morning all the way up to when I go and lay my head on the pillow at night. Meanwhile, I'm high. So I'm doing things that to me, it was shutting off my frontal lobe, where my executive decision making was just totally impaired. Like I didn't care at all.
Yeah. You're chasing a feeling that also you're never going to really get what you want, because you can't go back to the point where you don't have a tolerance and it worked really well. You can take as much as you want. It's not going to get you where you really want to be. So you're always chasing that, which is why every couple hours you need to take more, because you don't feel like you're high enough or whatever. And it's just like you said, that it's just affecting your decision making on all levels.
Yeah. And then the Adderall stops working. So I got to a point where I was taking up to 30 milligrams of Adderall, which is a dose I've never taken in the past, because that's also working. It's a stimulant, so it's different. But at the end of the day, there's no dopamine left to work. Yeah. So coffee's not doing anything. Adderall's not doing anything. You're waking up in the morning and you have zero dopamine. You know the drill. It's just rinse and repeat of firing on fumes, basically.
Yeah. You're never getting where you want to be. So when did you get to the point in this cycle where you knew you had a problem and knew that you wanted to maybe make some changes? Like how and when did you get to that point?
That was last August.
Okay.
It hit me, honestly, the first thing and this is vain, but it was the skin that I started getting super dry, flaky skin on my torso, like honestly on my butt, my hips,
Yeah.
which is weird. And I'm like, why
weird.
this area? And it's just flaking off. And that to me started to click with, oh, I thought I was having allergies because my nose is running.
Yeah.
And I just started putting two and two together where I'm like, all right, my nose is running all day. Oh, also, I don't really sweat as a person, and I can't walk to my car without being drenched in sweat. Then I start having this flaking. And then the thing that really clicked for me was one morning I woke up and it was bad. I had to down two of them. It was when I started doing two in the morning just to feel normal, just to go to work.
Okay.
Then I'm going, oh, I'm not doing this anymore to have a good day. I'm doing this now to have a normal, functional day.
Yeah, you're just trying to survive.
Yeah, and it clicked. And I went, oh shit, I gotta stop. And I did cold turkey like from that moment.
What was that like? Did you take time off work? Did you just keep going on with life like normal? How did you deal with that? And what were the symptoms like?
I didn't take time off work. My job, luckily, right now is pretty laid back.
Okay. That's
So
good.
that was on a Wednesday, and Thursday I went and got 4 more and was like, okay, I've gotta ease into this. And those 4 were gone. And then by Friday, I said, no, this is bad. I was meant to taper those 4 and I couldn't.
Yeah.
And
I did that a bunch of times too. It's
yeah,
it never worked for me.
it was past the point of tapering. So by the end of Friday, I just buckled down and doom scrolled the Reddit thread and just sat there and read as much as I could. And yeah, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had the full restless leg and anxiety, depression. I'm not going to say depression like I had never experienced before because I had experienced some suicidal thoughts in the past. But
Okay.
when I was a kid, and this was the first time in my adult life that I was like, oh, I don't want to be like I don't want to be here. This is crazy. But I kept telling myself, this is just brain chemicals. I was trying to brainwash myself out of the brainwashing and just saying, like, this has to be, if I know that I can go to the gas station right now and drink a stupid little drink and feel better, this is not reality. This is brain chemicals. I have no dopamine. I have no feel good chemicals right now. And I just kept telling myself that. And I white knuckled it. Did the Epsom salt baths. I listened to the podcast and went and got all the supplements. Yeah. And that lasted 3 or 4 days.
What was your worst withdrawal symptom, would you say?
Honestly, the sweating at night. I'll just be totally honest. I had some Xanax as needed prescribed, and I was very cautious. I didn't want to overdo that.
Of course. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I would only take a little bit and it would get me to sleep, but it wouldn't keep me asleep because I didn't want to take, honestly, I didn't even want to take a full milligram. And I would just wake up drenched in that. So I really prioritized my sleep because I knew that's when I'm healing. So I got all the supplements I needed for sleep, melatonin, all of that, just so that I could hold off on the Xanax if I could. So I was able to get some sleep a little bit. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it if I couldn't.
Yeah, a little bit of sleep is amazing because there's so many times I've gone so long without sleep. It's like the worst. It's so bad.
No, it will literally drive you crazy.
It does. You just get to a point where you don't even, reality and dreams start blending together.
Exactly. And it's counterproductive because that's when you're healing. Yeah. Your body won't let you. So I was like, I've got to prioritize sleep. So to answer your question, because I was able to get a little bit of sleep here and there, the worst for me was the sweating. I would wake up just drenched in sweat. And then the restless leg, of course. The restless leg only lasted for a couple days for me. The sweating lasted so long.
Yeah,
It
we
was
said
crazy.
this was August, right? So August in Texas too. It's not very conducive
Yeah,
to not sweating.
exactly. No, I'm had the fan on blast and I'm taking baths. I'm doing everything I could just to cool down my body temperature, and I'm waking up just drenched.
Yeah. Other than the little bit of Xanax you had to help with the sleep, did you find any of the supplements and things that you were taking, anything in particular that you'd say that was helpful?
Yes. So I went on a full. There was a guy, and I wish I could remember his name. That was on. I think you interviewed him, and I want to say it was Nick or something. He didn't live in the States. He had a long history of substance abuse, but he withdrew when he
Might
was
have
in
been Mick. I
Mexico.
think he was, yeah.
He went through a full. He had a history with some sort of science career where he like dug into the science behind it, and he listed out like what he was taking morning, afternoon, and night. And
Okay.
I went in and wrote that out, and I went and got all of those. But I did discover a supplement brand. It's called Stasis, if I can say it on here. It's
Sure.
actually designed for people who take Adderall, and it has a lot of the stuff that he touched on with some other stuff in there that when I dug into it seemed very beneficial when it comes to the dopamine reward system that I thought was great. So it comes in a morning. They give you a morning supplement and a nighttime supplement. And there's a lot of overlap in there. And if you actually remove the marketing for Adderall from it, it is extremely applicable to opioid withdrawals and protecting the dopamine reward system and the GABAergic system and all of that. So it's got like L-theanine in it, which supports production of serotonin, dopamine, GABA, all of that. There's saffron, which I've discovered it supports the cortisol response. And there's something like in India, apparently, I've heard if someone's like extremely happy, they'll say, "Oh, you must be eating a lot of saffron." It's
Okay.
almost
I
the
didn't know that.
equivalent. Yeah, the studies are showing a lot of equivalencies to it with SSRIs.
Okay.
And how extremely effective it is for serotonin. The night supplement has melatonin in it, of course, which we all know about. Vitamin B6, which helps with dopamine, serotonin, GABA, norepinephrine, magnesium, magnolia bark.
Yeah,
You
there's a
can
lot of
go
good
on their
stuff in there.
website. It's great. It's got ashwagandha. It was really helpful for me,
Okay,
honestly.
good. Yeah, that's
And
we're always looking for good tips to share with listeners. So if,
I do want to
Stasis-
note on their website, they attach with each ingredient, they attach a study, a peer-reviewed study for
that's awesome.
each ingredient and the dose on there. So it is evidence-based. I can't recommend it enough. And then on top of that, I just supplemented with collagen and things that I was like, I got to get my skin back.
Yeah, I understand. I had some bad acne from my kratom use as well. So
And it won't heal.
Yeah, it took a long time, but it eventually got better, which was good. What were the first 30 days once you got through the acutes? How was that experience?
I had a pretty rapid turnaround as far as, when it came to the mental stuff, there's a lot of debate out there as far as does pause exist and what is it and yada. And I've come to the conclusion for me, pause is absolutely a real thing. However, I think it's obviously very nuanced, and I wasn't one of those people that my life didn't implode. I didn't lose my job.
Yeah.
I didn't go to jail. There wasn't all of that. So I think that's why I was able to get through that acute phase of soul crushing depression that I touched on. It was very real. It was awful.
I had that too. That was the worst symptom. It was what led me to relapse on the stuff like so many times.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally relate to that. I had to sit there and just mantra myself until this isn't real.
Yeah, there's
basically.
all you can do is sit through it and just tell yourself that it'll go away. And exactly, it's just
brain
blast
chemistry.
of that stuff getting out of your brain and your serotonin and dopamine systems adjusting to what normal life is like.
Yeah, you're trying to come back up to baseline. So
yeah, exactly.
Once that kind of passed, which luckily was pretty quickly, and I opened up to people in my life about it,
Okay, good.
and
Yeah.
let them know. I told some of my close friends, and I was like, look, this is embarrassing, but I basically got addicted to gas station heroin here, and I'm
You're
not
not the only
myself right
one.
now.
Well,
Yeah.
it happens.
And so once that kind of passed, my turnaround just gradually got better. I went and started doing cryo when I could tolerate being in public, cryo
Okay.
chamber, cold therapy, to try to just give myself some endogenous dopamine throughout the day. And it was really effective. But yeah, I got back to normal where I was starting to go see friends and I was more reliable and all the good stuff you want. And then here comes Christmas.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, I got to go see family, and my house is a mess. I need to clean. And I fell into let me just go get one. And
Oh,
I know
okay. I was going to ask you if you had any relapses, and
yeah,
here we go.
I sure did. And it was December, right before Christmas. And I'm like, I'm going to go get one. And I cleaned my whole apartment, got ready, went home to see the family, stopped on the way there and got another one for no reason.
As you do. Yeah.
Yep. And before I knew it, I'm back to doing no more than 4 a day. And
It's still a healthy habit, though.
yep, very quickly started having the skin thing again, drying out. I'm just
Okay.
dried up. And I think I did that for about a week or two. And I was like, all right, I'm done. No, gotta stop.
Yeah.
Had minor withdrawals after that, the temperature regulation thing, but I cut it as soon as I could, as quickly as I could.
Okay, yeah. So you caught it where it wasn't too bad with the withdrawals. Yeah, because they come back so much faster every time you relapse. It just gets like quicker and quicker. I got to the point where it could be a couple days and I'd be like in the full blown hell of it again.
Yeah, see, and that's what I was worried about, because I'm like, I was very shocked that quickly I started having physical ailments again with the skin and the dryness and flaking. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this has not been that long. However, albeit I'm doing 4 of these.
I know that there is people that drink a lot of kava can have skin issues and issues with dry skin. So maybe that's what your body was reacting to, because I know there's that in there. But it could be the kratom too, because it messed my skin up as well.
Yeah, I've seen both, because there's some term for it in the kava world.
I think there is too. I don't know much about that, and I'm not trying to learn about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me neither. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because there's overlap and it's not good either way.
So what are you like now that you've had this relapse experience? You've been off for probably about 30-ish days, I would say, maybe a little bit more than that. Close to
It was Christmas, so that was
a few weeks.
Yeah,
few weeks. Okay. What are you planning on doing now to prevent another relapse and stay away from this
getting back into it?
Yeah.
It's tough, because that's where I start getting into I don't know. I haven't gone to NA or AA or any of that.
Yeah.
I do have a support group. Told my friends, even with that relapse, the ones that I initially opened up to, my mom and dad even know.
All right. Okay.
So I have the best parents in the world, and so I have support. Honestly, I'm just trying to not be too hard on myself with it. I've gone into the deep dives with the Reddit community and this podcast and everything, and I think I have a healthy, at least shameful perspective, or shameless perspective, where I'm like, okay, this is not uncommon.
Yeah.
Relapse is part of at least pushing the needle forward. And I will say, when that first quit, I had a really big fear of, okay, what am I going to do? Am I now this person that has to go through the rest of my life labeling themselves as this kratom addict? And am I going to have to navigate the rest of my life avoiding this substance?
Yeah.
And that itself just brought me so much anxiety that I had to narrow my focus a little bit and say, let's just give myself a smaller goal and let's quit for now. And
that's recovery 101 right there. I don't know. I don't ever plan on drinking again, but I just always tell myself I don't have to drink today. I don't
Yeah.
have to use kratom today. As long as I don't do it today, I could do whatever I want tomorrow. But for today, I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah. And I was really scared of that relapse thing. I'm sitting there
Yeah.
going, I feel like I could relapse. Now that I did, I'm proud of myself that I cut it off when I did, but I'm also humbled a little bit, of course, that it could happen again.
You might not be
And
as lucky next time. You never know.
yeah, I can't navigate in fear of it, but I did learn something from it. I did learn that what we all say we can go get one more, and I couldn't. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to do it and learn it for yourself. So as of right now, I don't have any desire. I don't have that. I just need one more type thing, but I am still very early in this.
Yeah, you're super
World.
early in this.
Yeah.
And you had I think, in the scheme of things, you started using last April and you quit in August. So that's 4 months. Like me, that has been in this game since I was like 17 years old. It's easy to be like, that wasn't that much, but it's all
Yeah.
individualized, and it all can lead to the same miserable end. So it really doesn't. I don't try to like look at things in that way. But yeah, I think you'll gain perspective as you move forward and figure out what the approach is that's best for you. And if you find yourself using this substance or other substances in a way that you're seeing as unhealthy, you've been exposed to some recovery here, and you can choose to do what you will with that.
I do have a friend that is a previous, I think, heroin, like full-blown opioid addict through and through. And I had reached out to him that first time about kratom. He had posted on Instagram about Feel Free, and I saw it. And he said, just curious, has anyone come across these? And I messaged him and I said, yeah, I just quit these. And he goes, oh my God. And I had known he had been in the recovery world in the past, and he opened that door to me and was like, all right, if you need help in the future, I'm here. So I do have that connection. I think he sponsors people.
Good.
If I do find myself 6 months from now back again, and I know I'm relapsing, I have someone I can reach out to. I'm educated on MAT and Sublocade and all of that. I know it's all there. I don't want to get to that point.
Of course, yeah.
Fingers crossed, but I have a healthy amount of fear now that I'm like, oh, that is a very real possibility for me with this. This is my drug of choice. Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like it. Okay. What was I going to ask you? In the medical field, do you come across kratom at all? Did you know a lot about it beforehand? Had you had any experience with it? Because I know that it seems to be getting bigger in the medical field, but still not hugely known like something like heroin or cocaine.
Right. No, it is not. Yeah, it's becoming more prevalent, but in my experience, no, it is not known. It's not a ubiquitous topic in at least my areas. So I've been in ICU.
Okay.
So we don't really get a lot of patients that are dependent. Or I don't really cross over into the substance abuse world.
Yeah,
there,
treating acute injuries and acute things going wrong.
Yeah.
Where maybe someone happens to be an addict and maybe that was a consequence they're experiencing something, but you're not going to be involved with the care to deal with a substance abuse issue.
Like I had a patient that had Suboxone, and I had to administer that. So I knew what it was. I knew what it was used for, but it's still very antiquated and traditional when it comes to the traditional drugs of abuse.
Yeah.
I reached out to people in my medical community through my experience and said, hey, have you heard of this? Were you aware of this? And none of them knew what it was.
Oh, yeah.
Other than like the kratom kava bars that are popping up now.
Okay.
But not on the level of, oh, this is acting on the opioid receptors. Not on the level of this can cause full-blown classic opioid withdrawals. No, none of that at all.
I think if the medical community knew more about that, there'd probably be a lot more alarm bells going off. But
Oh my gosh, there should be. I called my friend who's a PA and I was like, hey, by the way, just went through classic opioid withdrawals from a little shot that I was getting at the gas station. And he was shocked by it. And he was like, oh, I had tried this myself, but honestly didn't even really feel anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, and similarly, like I had gone and gotten the capsules and I'm like, I didn't really feel much. I had a little bit of a better day, but that's not the same as an extract that is it highly potent that I come to find out.
Yeah, or some of the even stronger.
Or 7-OH, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Metabolite. All right, let's see. Other than supplements or anything like that, is there anything else if someone was going to come to ask you, had a similar experience, or let's say in the future you're working in a job where you happen to have a patient that's experiencing a similar detox from a product like you were? If there's one thing you could recommend to them, what would you recommend?
Oh my gosh, I have a ton of stuff that I want to recommend. I actually have a couple of things I do as far as the medical side of things I did want to touch on.
Yeah, we can hit on those too.
One of the things that I see come up a lot on Reddit that I think is not talked about enough is the interaction of SSRIs and antipsychotics with kratom.
Yeah,
and specifically
I'm wondering
mitragynine.
about that too because of the SSR-like properties and the fact that there's a withdrawal component that can be similar along with the opiate withdrawal.
And I do want to put a disclaimer. I'm not a researcher, or this is, even though I'm in the medical world, I'm just someone out here that's Googling these studies and reading them on PubMed. And a lot of this is anecdotal on Reddit. However, I think we have enough evidence at this point. If you read these studies, almost every one of them says this is a substance of extreme concern that needs to be researched more. So every single one of them says that this is a highly concerning substance and we need more research.
Yeah.
That being said, there are studies now that are showing that mitragynine does work on serotonin. It does.
Interesting.
It does affect serotonin production. Whenever you're taking an SSRI and you are supplementing your serotonin production plus you're taking kratom, that's when we're starting to see these kratom deaths, honestly, the seizures. It's classic serotonin syndrome in the medical world that my friend, the PA that I was talking about a minute ago, I was talking to him about it and he beat me to it before I could even say serotonin syndrome. He said, oh, they're having serotonin syndrome. And I'm like, yeah.
I had wondered that too when I had heard about, I think there's a lawsuit in Washington State and there was a video where the person had a seizure and died actually in a smoke shop and they were trying to buy more, coincidentally. But it reminded me a lot of back in the I'm a little bit older than you, in the early 2000s when there was a lot of news about interactions with SSRIs and people taking ecstasy and MDMA because of the serotonin release and then the flooding and them, having seizures. And it was very similar. So,
yeah, so it's going to lower your threshold for seizures if you are prone to them for whatever reason. But even if you're not, if you don't have family history of epilepsy or anything like that, if you are flooding your receptors with serotonin, you're at high risk for seizures. And I keep seeing it so often on Reddit, and it terrifies me because I've seen posts of people saying they told their doctor they were taking kratom and they're having anxiety and depression, and then the physician prescribes them an SSRI, but they haven't stopped taking kratom. And I'm like, hey, you're adding fuel to the fire here. You've got to pick one or the other. I'm sorry. I'm never going to encourage someone to take kratom. However, stop your SSRI. I don't care. You don't need it if you're taking kratom. I think, honestly, we should be teaching people. I think we should start equating kratom as an SSRI and just saying, all right, you don't need your SSRI if you're going to be taking this supplement.
Interesting.
It's too dangerous. And we know it is evidence-based research that it is affecting your serotonin production. Pick one. I would prefer if people picked the prescribed SSRI, but I would not double up at all. It's too dangerous. And it's deadly dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor and can't give medical advice and all that stuff. Disclaimer there, but I have done a little bit of reading myself. And I do know that a lot of the kratom deaths, what coroners and medical professionals, doctors and such have ruled is that it's basically not really the classic opioid death or overdose with the respiratory depression. It's what you're saying. It's the seizures. It's mostly doing it. Not necessarily surprised that could be a culprit. But, and even like you said, there are several cases of people that have passed away from just kratom with no other substance in their bloodstream.
They say that an SSRI is not going to be classified as a substance of concern.
If they're not, I don't know. I guess you'd have to be looking at the bigger picture and tying one together.
So they're saying no other illicit substances. So I hear these stories.
I see that.
They're saying, they didn't have anything else in their system, but I'm like, okay, but were they taking a prescribed SSRI?
Yeah. Okay.
So I think there's a little nuance and there's a little weeds there that
of course,
is not getting touched on. And I think it's of note that
it's definitely
it's getting missed. Not saying that there's going to be situations where someone isn't taking one that has a seizure, because there is a genetic component with seizures. And like I said, it can lower your threshold there. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of nuance there. And it's worth noting that when I'm reading these posts, you don't have all the information that you need from a medical perspective. And especially even these news stories where they're like, there's nothing in their system. And I'm like, we don't. Yeah, but what about prescribed things?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. What it comes down to, like, ultimately is like the part that you said that all the studies said was we need more research.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a guinea pig or not? Because that's essentially what I would say you're doing, because we don't have enough research and there isn't enough knowledge in the medical community, the scientific community, to equate every single possible outcome. That's why it takes 10 years to get a drug to market. It's not because people want to wait 10 years to get a cure for cancer or whatever they're trying to get on the market. It's because all of these things. And that's why advertisements sometimes for pharmaceuticals, it has every side effect under the book. That's because if one person in a study of 1 million had them, they have to list it as a side effect. We don't have any of that information with any of these products.
Yeah, we need the research. We need to know what's going to happen, specifically with interactions with different medications. That's exactly from a study I read that was saying this substance is too bioactive to not have the research to know how it's interacting with all of these other chemicals.
Yeah,
we're already prescribing to be giving it at 7-Eleven. It's not safe. It's insane.
No, it is quite insane when you look at it in hindsight.
One of the other things I see a lot, someone had posted recently on Reddit about how they were through the acutes, and they several weeks later they woke up and they had night sweats again, and they had some restless leg, and then they're like, when is this going to be over? Is this normal? And once again, if they had walked into my clinic, the first thing I'm going to ask them is more details, like, okay, are you drinking alcohol? So I bring that up because opioids, i.e. kratom, which I think is inarguably an opioid, they suppress the central nervous system. A lot of people will drink alcohol during their withdrawals to get some sleep, and that's fine, whatever. I think people need to be aware that both of these are considered, the non-medical term would be a depressant, but that stems from they both depress the central nervous system. Yeah. So when we're in our kratom phase and we're constantly taking this opioid, our central nervous system's depressed and then we stop it, all of a sudden that central nervous system goes into overdrive. And that's when you start having the sweating, the restless legs, the extreme anxiety. All of these physical withdrawal symptoms are because your body is going into that fight or flight mechanism that's been suppressed. And it's in that fight or flight when you're just chilling at work or sitting on the couch. So then you get over it and then you start drinking alcohol. You might start seeing some of these symptoms start to resurface a little bit. Even though it's not an opioid, the thing that opioid was suppressing, the alcohol's also suppressing. So that's when you start to see little flare-ups. I've noticed. If I've never had an issue with alcohol, but I did notice like whenever I would go out I'd start to feel better. I'd go out and have some drinks with friends. I'd wake up that night drenched in sweat.
Interesting.
And I think people need to realize the nuances there of all of these little things that are going into their withdrawal story.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective to apply to it. Don't discount the little things. If you're a couple weeks out and you start to have something pop up, maybe it's, something that you're combining with the last of whatever's trying to get out of your system. Maybe it's not related to kratom at all, and you've got something else going on that you could have masked because you were numbed out from kratom. There's so many possibilities.
Yeah. Okay, I'll touch on one more thing real quick. I know it's been an hour now, but
that's all right. We can hit on one more thing, I think.
All right. One other thing I wanted to bring up was Imodium or loperamide, which if you post about it in the Reddit, I think there's like a disclaimer that the auto mod pops up.
Yeah, the bot.
Yeah. So the reason that pops up, loperamide, the generic name for Imodium, is actually it is an opioid. So it is the only opioid that does not cross the blood-brain barrier.
Yep.
And they teach us this in nursing school, actually, but that's why it's able to be sold over the counter. I would caution people, if you're going through your withdrawals and you've truly fucked your GI tract and so you're having diarrhea.
Yeah, it's normal.
Yeah, very normal. If you take Imodium, it's absolutely going to work because you're essentially replacing the kratom with the Imodium for the GI tract. However, if you overdo it, it's similar to the central nervous system, like I was talking about. Your GI tract is going into overdrive because it's been suppressed. It will help, but I would encourage caution with it and use it. Like if you weren't able to taper your kratom, you can absolutely taper Imodium and functionally use that to ease yourself. That would be a tip from me is to taper the Imodium and kind of ease your GI system back to a baseline.
Yeah.
Without getting high.
Yeah. Make sure I know this just because from some old school, like junkie shit.
Yeah.
Basically, what did they used to call Imodium? It was the poor man's methadone. You don't want to take, I think, more than the recommended daily doses, because I know if you take a lot of that amount, like people have done weird shit to try to get it to.
Is there a way to abuse it?
There is, but it has some weird funky. There is some weird funky thing where it does a weird QT rhythm with your heart, and it has killed a lot of people. So it's really risky. So even like the most hardened junkies will not mess with taking a lot of Imodium. So just don't take a massive dose. Take
Are they abusing it to? Is they're trying to get past that blood-brain barrier thing, or
there's all kinds of like weirdo stories. Like if you take quinine or use this different extract, I can't remember, but I never messed with it. But there's like weirdo stories out there. That's one of the reasons that bot warning is on there on Reddit, because they want people to be careful too, so don't take a lot of it.
Yeah, and then if you take a lot of it, you're risking small bowel obstruction, and that's deadly. And
and you're just going to get stuck on taking a lot of Imodium every day because you're not going to want to stop taking that because you'll get sick then.
Exactly. You're chasing waterfalls there, literal diarrhea waterfalls.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Mitch, it's been really great talking to you. Is there anything else you want to chat about with the audience? Anything we didn't get into that you want to get into, or any questions you want to ask me?
Yeah, there's several subjects I have here that I didn't really get to touch on, but maybe we could do it at another time, such as like testosterone and then even the GLP-1s as far as craving. I don't know
You
if
know what would be great? We do these Wednesday episodes where we focus on, like, we had a doctor on at one point. We're gonna have Decima's gonna come back and announce some things. Charlie's gonna talk to another medical professional in a few weeks. So if you want, we could have you back in a couple weeks and maybe gather some topics, send them our way. You've got our email, and then we can like noodle on it. And we can have you back on a Wednesday and just focus specifically on like the medical stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to do that because there's a lot of information out there, and I have a lot of experience when it comes to testosterone injections, and I keep seeing that.
I'd love to hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. I know kratom affects the hormone balance, and this applies to men and women. I don't think a lot of women realize that you can be a candidate for testosterone as well. And then with the GLP-1, that's my whole job now. So yeah, I'd love to touch base on that. And I think there's a lot of benefits to both that's worth exploring.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll have you back. We'll put it out on a Wednesday, and yeah, it'll be great. That's awesome.
Sounds good. Hey, I appreciate your time, and I love everything y'all are doing. This podcast has been almost literally a lifesaver for me. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Fan. You too.